let's get into that first big story. And I'm going to start with this tweet from Ryan James Gerdusky. He says, Georgia GOP primary turnout by year. In 2018, 608,380. In 2022, 1,109,506. That is almost double. So as I mentioned in the intro to this show, for those that didn't see it, there's a lot of ways you can accomplish that. You know, I was saying like destroying the economy is one of those ways. I think that certainly shocked a bunch of people. $5 a gallon gasoline is going to get a lot of people to the polls. But I also think it's going to get a lot of Democrats to switch, and that's a contributing factor. Check this out. From the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, data shows thousands of Democrats voting in GOP primary. They say 7% of Georgia voters who cast a GOP ballot previously polled a Democratic ballot 2 years ago. If that's true, and you actually go down and look at the Democrat numbers, it looks like Democrats dropped by about 7%. Republicans jumped by about 7%. So it looks like Democrats may have dropped anywhere from 7 to 10%. Republicans jumped 7%.
Well, they're trying to say that that's some ploy by the Democrats to get the candidates that they want and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. The thing that really matters about this, that, you know, I live in Los Angeles, California, and people are going to be liberal there until the world ends. It's going to be an apocalyptic leftist nightmare forever. And so what I think is important is that it's about the children. I think that this is the most about the schools, what's happening with the transgender movement and what's happening with our education system. I think we saw what happened in Virginia, and I think that if we continue on the path as conservatives, hammering on education, then we're going to be able to continue to switch voters. You switch independent voters, you switch Democrat voters over to Republican, and if you have Republicans who come out and say, listen, my number one priority is education. My number one priority is your kids, because the left thinks that the schools own your kids. The parents shouldn't have a say in your kids' lives. If conservatives and Republicans keep pushing on that, then you will win. You will switch people over.
I think might have been James Lindsay who said this, that the Democrats are turning parents into a voting bloc.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking at all these rallies, all these different things, especially again in California, you know, whether they're COVID rallies or education rallies. And I've said this 1,000 times before, this is a revolution of normal people. Like, these people who come to these rallies, they're not the people who are going to the 2016 Trump rallies, you know, MAGA and their hats on and everything with Confederate flags. These are parents who just said, I'm fed up with this nonsense. I want to change my community.
That was true in 2016.
Yeah.
I went to a bunch of these Trump rallies. We've talked about it tons of times, where the people I met were like, I'm not a Republican. I've never voted Republican. Yeah. I remember I was in Fort Lauderdale and I was talking to some middle-aged woman, and she was so excited. She had her kids and they were about to watch Trump speak. And so I was just asking people covering the rally, like, what's your position? You know, are you a Republican? She's like, oh, no, I've never voted before. She's like, wow. No one's ever spoken to me the way Trump has when talking about these issues that affect my community. And I was like, wow. So we saw that. We saw Trump lit up areas that just people wouldn't turn out for.
Right.
And at the same time, the Democratic Party, I mean, they basically immolated when they ruined Bernie Sanders in 2016 with the Hillary Clinton DNC scandal, where they colluded essentially when the emails came out you could find to keep him from getting the nomination. And then again in 2020, when it looked like Bernie Sanders was hot, and then all of a sudden Biden appears out of nowhere, and they put this near demented guy, this 79-year-old man or 78-year-old man into office. I have my faith in that, and the leadership of that party is gone compared to where it was 15, 20 years ago. And you made a good point about education. That was what I thought at the top of the show, and Tim was leading us in. I think that's a big part of this, is the education, is that kids have been getting put in these government facilities and without oversight are being indoctrinated essentially, and people have had it.
Yeah, I mean, they should put cameras in all the classrooms.
Mm-hmm. The numbers doubling. I mean, that's crazy. It's almost doubling the amount of GOP turnout. That's crazy.
Isn't it a lot COVID as well? I mean, the way that they handled all the COVID restrictions, that normal people who wouldn't say, oh, I'm necessarily Republican, are fed up with the way that they handled that. I mean, that goes beyond politics as well.
Mm-hmm. I really do just think all of those things are an issue, but the economy. Yeah. It's the economy, stupid, is the famous quote.
Well, they did polls on it, yeah. They show the jobs in the economy. I mean, I hope that MSNBC just keeps talking about January 6th and insurrection and all those kind of things, because it doesn't mean anything to people.
You know what? There's one thing that did it.
The Federal Reserve.
No. There's one thing.
That's a jail, right?
Yeah. One thing all of you at home participated in it. And do you know what that one thing was that caused this big shift?
What?
Putting those little stickers of Joe Biden pointing at gas prices, saying, I did that.
Yeah.
How many regular people went to the gas pump and they went, what? And then they saw Joe Biden, I did that.
Like,
and then
he did do that.
And he did do that.
He did.
$5.
Yeah, I err on the side of that the economy was on its way down anyway with this mass printing of money since 2008, and Obama bailed out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But Biden shutting down the pipelines definitely accelerated the process.
Yeah.
Oh,
Since the meeting at Jekyll Island.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I blame Rockefeller.
Yeah.
You ever see the time travel meme? Where it's like what women, what's the Wojciech's like what women would do, and it's like the woman's like I'm your granddaughter, and she's like wow, and then for the men it's a guy in full tactical gear, and then
we have to stop this meeting.
Well, there's another guy wearing like a World War I helmet with rifle, and it's like Jekyll Island 1910, and he's like trust me, great grandfather, we have to do this.
We have to do it.
If you say so.
Yeah, Andrew Jackson knew.
They shot that guy.
Yeah,
he broke up like what was it, the second central bank?
Yep.
And then they put him on the 20 as like to slap him in the face.
I know.
Yeah. The founding fathers since the beginning have warned us against central banks and that Congress is supposed to control our money.
But as much as I think people who are savvy might understand there's an issue with the centralized control of your currency, for the average person, they can't see that far.
Right.
They can see first layer issues and problems. They can see, I make $15 an hour. All the Democrats claim that was a living wage. I can't buy gas. And so they're just like, make the gas cheaper, don't care.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if your gas is only going up a couple cents and maybe it's $20 a month, like I think that people need to take also some responsibility and say, okay, if it's only going up this much a month, but it's not in just the gas. I mean, we can talk about gas, but it's in every single facet of our economy because the gas affects how much your food costs. I mean, it affects, and you have this war in Ukraine and Russia and everything affects how much the food costs. I mean, there's a lot more than just the price of gas that's affecting people, especially then the new housing bubble. There's a lot going on.
I found out why I haven't gotten Starlink yet.
Why?
So I ordered Starlink a while ago.
Biden's fault.
Well, partly. it's the supply chain. It's the silicon chips.
Yeah.
So the shortages.
Oh yeah.
Harumph, I say.
Well, that's the same with cars. I mean, cars, they have special chips that can, like a BMW dealership, they have special chips that only go in their cars, and they're only made in one place.
Yeah.
And because of that is all shut down essentially because these supply chain issues. It makes it so that they can't get these chips for the BMWs and other cars. Drives the price up.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said he was going to vote Republican.
Yeah.
And I tweeted, Democrats should start to ask themselves why they're losing people. And they don't care. The response on Twitter was like, rich guy doesn't want to pay taxes. Surprise, surprise. And I'm like, you had a rich guy who just paid more taxes than anyone else in history who was voting for your people.
But I think they never cared. If you call people deplorables, you surely don't care how they feel about you.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a really good point. So I was talking about how during COVID, Joe Biden, he would say things like, here's what we have to do, and we're going to lock these things down. And I'm like, he's talking about things that red states aren't doing, which means he's clearly not talking to Republicans at all. That's amazing. But if you go back to Hillary Clinton, the deplorables, this country's been divided for a long time. It's just been getting worse. I wonder if the real issue is not that the country is getting more divided, but that we can really see what the other people think when they tweet it.
Yeah. I was thinking like, what's obviously there was chaos under the table and we've lifted the sheet. Now we see the chaos, but is that making it more chaotic that we can see it, or are we just now aware that it's been chaotic?
Well, I think that, going back to Marx and Marcuse and the Frankfurt School, you'll find that leftism as an ideology is revolutionary in nature. If you're going to have this ideology be ruling these people's lives, then that's what they're going to be pushing for. And they will put it under the guise of, helpfulness and morality, helping everyone, equality. They'll put it under those sort of umbrella terms. But really, it's a revolution or an ideology based on destruction. Yeah. That's what it is. Critical theory, in essence, not just critical race theory, critical gender theory, any of these, all it is destruction.
Critical theory itself, the original Marxist ideas.
Is it based like the idea that you want to kneecap your opponent metaphorically? Is that all based on like you must tear down the other to acquire their level of equality?
Well, yeah, that's Marxist in view. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, is that other people have something that you don't, and you want to take it from them to make it equal for everyone. That's from layman's terms, but yeah.
Just greedy people.
Yeah, everyone else who has more than you is greedy.
Lazy too. That's
the craziest thing to me is like my view, my perspective on the world is that you are owed nothing, and you deserve nothing, but hope that you will get what you've worked for and things like that, right? You can work as hard as you want, and typically that does lead to success. Perseverance does lead to success. There's a possibility you could work really, really hard and then you get Julian Assanged. Someone comes and just screws you over. So I look at like the formula shortage. And there are so many people who are like, why isn't the government providing for us? Why isn't the government giving us these things? I see all these memes on the leftist where there's like, the problem is there's only 4 companies that make formula. And I'm like, and what if there were 0? It's the craziest thing that you think the government should intervene because there aren't enough. No, the government intervening was the problem in the first place. We need market competition to actually start saying, okay, we need more baby formula. The problem is the government shut down everything.
The government shut down the world from COVID. That's the craziest part. I'm just getting really tired of the where's the government to save me mindset. Like in the Texas shooting, they were like, where were the police? And I'm like, well, they were outside. You know, they're doing their police stuff. Yeah. Doesn't mean that they can stop all the crime.
Right. And Eva, you know this about the formula that's in Europe versus the formula that's here.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why the formula is so bad here is because of the government. I mean,
I've seen the ingredient list. They're totally different. Yeah. Like what's in it here, I don't know what you're feeding your baby.
Corn syrup solids.
Oh, really bad. A lot of soy.
Very strange.
Do you know off the top of your head what some of the ingredients are?
Right. It was a lot of soy. Yeah. And what else?
There's like canola oil and something. Yeah.
Corn syrup solids.
Corn syrup, yeah.
Corn syrup, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the crazy things is that baby foods have too much salt in them because parents taste it to see if it's good.
Yeah.
And adults can't taste as well as a kid can, so they're like, oh, that's good, and salty, and then they give their babies too much sodium.
Oh man, that makes people's hair thin. Watch out.
There is an issue, I suppose, in that we have built the civilization off of these technologies like formula, like petroleum, fossil fuels, and things like that. And then when it comes about that you can't get them for whatever reason, we're going back to the dark ages. We're going back to the way things were. I don't look at that and think the solution is government. I look at that and say human society and civilization was unable to get to that point. But when you can see the government actually impeding, you're like, actually, we probably would continue to grow and thrive were it not for the intervention of this harsh regulation.
That's true, and that's an interesting point. I remember when this first happened, I wrote about it because I was like, my first thought was not, we need the government to step in and save us. My first thought was, how did my great-grandmother do this? Because they did, she would breastfeed, and if you can't, you would get like a wet nurse. Some women can't for whatever reason. And if you adopt a child, we want to encourage adoption, so you need to figure out a way to get around that. So they would use wet nurses, they would use these other different kinds of milk, but at no point did they say we need a government agency to step in and make this happen.
Yeah.
Just insane.
Who was this woman? I don't remember, but I saw something on Twitter. It was a woman who tweeted about this. She said like, why don't we breastfeed more?
Oh yeah.
And she got a massive
shellacked. Yeah.
Yeah, but like crazy, like as if it was the most scandalous thing to suggest.
Well, yes, but I feel like there's a lot of guilt assigned to women who aren't able to breastfeed to the point where it just feels like they're being attacked, and they have a very emotional response, as women tend to do. So it's like they view it as very much like a personal.
That's obviously very sad. But I mean, the way that woman was like destroyed for just one tweet, I was like, okay.
It's so with the formula thing, it's interesting. People have pointed out that not all women can breastfeed.
Right.
And okay, so what would we do in the past? Wet nurses.
Right.
So one woman who was producing too much the baby would get nourished from her, I suppose. It's kind of crazy thought when you realize that we have to use a technology to feed our babies.
Well, that's like one thing conservatives won't admit is that the Industrial Revolution in its essence actually weakened the family unit throughout the West. Sure. But conservatives don't want to have that conversation. Usually about the free market, but
Think about the future, what the future is going to be like. I mean, I think where we're headed right now is a future where no one breastfeeds at all for a variety of reasons. One,
you don't even have to carry the baby in your own womb anymore with ectogenesis. So
exactly, we've talked about that. Artificial wombs that are coming.
Yeah, so, China.
And you know what the crazy thing is? I hear from the left. This is what they were tweeting at me. I said, why kill the baby? Because the Democrats were, I don't want to rehash the whole abortion thing, but Democrats wanted to pass an abortion up to the point of birth for the health of the mother if the baby's viable. I'm like, that's the question. The baby's viable, it can survive. Why kill it? And when on Twitter I tweeted about this, some of the responses I got was, why should a woman have to destroy her body? And then I was just like, that's interesting. That's how you see it. That's how they
view
see
it that way. Yeah.
They view it as destroying your body. It's like, I don't know. There's like a bunch of women who've had like 5 kids and they're fit and their bodies are just fine.
Right. Does time also destroy your body?
Yes.
I mean, yes, then. Yes.
Yeah. It does,
We need government legislation on time.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Restrict it now.
Yes. Motion will slow. That's all. Time is just a...
Healthcare is a really good example of what I'm trying to convey with this idea. And it's that there was a story, I think it was out of Atlanta, where a kid had a genetic disorder and there was a cure, a genetic therapy that cost $1 million per treatment. And so the family was like, the state should pay for it. And the state was like, we cannot give $1 million for one kid because what are we going to do? Give it to everybody? We can't afford that. The issue is the medicine now exists because it's created. And these people say, therefore, we deserve it. That's fascinating. So my response to a lot of these people who say healthcare is a human right, I'm like, let's say you have a disease that has no cure. You just resign yourself, I suppose, to the fact you have no cure. But then all of a sudden someone invents a cure through hard work, through heavy investment, and now it's a right? Now you are... That's crazy to me. That would be like saying cell phones are a human right. Technology that doesn't exist, you have no right to, but as soon as someone invents it, it's your right. That makes no sense.
Like, I'm hungry, so your food is my right. Like, that's not... We've obviously decided that's not the way society works.
So this is the ultimate problem I see. I shouldn't say the ultimate problem, but this is a big problem I see with modern politics, in that a lot of what you hear from the left is something exists, therefore it's my right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, bro, that didn't exist for our parents. Like there's cures for diseases today that there were no cures for 30 years ago. No one went around being like, I should have a right to have that disease cured, and they'd be like, there's no cure. What are you talking about? You have no. There's nothing. Someone invents it. So I suppose like the issue is, if we all come together and put billions of dollars in investment in big companies to invent one cure, who gets it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's whoever can fund the development of it.
Yeah.
But people on the left often will just look at the world. It's not just about medicine. It's about every aspect of it. I have a right to what currently exists, period. You don't. You can work for it. You can try and earn it. Some things have gotten cheaper. Look, poor people, I tell you this, man, poor people today live better than Rockefeller did. They got refrigerators. They got air conditioning. They got clean running water. Better dental care than the ultra wealthy back 120 years ago.
I think that you do want to make sure people get their needs met at the very least, because otherwise then they go towards might is right and they'll seize control or take the goods for themselves by force. And that doesn't work either.
Yes, but listen.
Then you got to have then if you're talking about the government coming in, is that...
But...
We're talking about hungry militia stepping in and being like, your land's mine now.
Yeah. Everything's a need, all right? Before the era of formula, you couldn't feed your baby, You have a need, you need food for your baby. Too bad, what are you going to do? You got your wife didn't produce enough milk, hopefully there's a wet nurse. Mm-hmm. Now that formula exists, it becomes a need. Like the baby always needed food, but we created a way to sustain that. So, technology. At first, cell phones were a great thing. They made your job easier. Now you have to have one. You can't have a job unless they can get in touch with you and you have an email account. Email used to be a luxury. Some people didn't think it would catch on.
That's interesting about basic needs. Food, shelter, transportation maybe is one. Food and shelter. Because as you invent new types of shelter, then people feel like those are part of their basic needs. That I need that now. I need that solar-powered house because that's...
Well,
that's my shelter.
I was taking Eva around Los Angeles a couple days ago, and we were going, if anyone is in LA, you know, the Grove, and there's a market called Erewhon over there, which is just a horrible, horrible place. But
so fancy.
So fancy, just terrible. $20 a smoothie, not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's like in LA, you have a society that's very decadent, that's built on like, okay, if I have some more money, I can go this kind of store. And if I have even more money, I can go to this type of grocery store. And so then those type of people feel like, okay, well now I need this organic grass-fed chicken that gets to poop 20 miles away from another chicken, right? They feel like they need that. And so it's like, how do you stop where it's like, this is a need and this is a want? How do you define what each one is?
Well, once you get to the point where technology is utilized by everybody, it becomes normal. Yeah. Now, today, if you got a job somewhere and didn't have a cell phone, they'd be like, this is ridiculous. It's so inconvenient to get a hold of you. The norm is to have a phone. Right. Now it's a need. So over time, everything becomes a need. Mm-hmm. When we invented baby formula, it was like, oh, thank heavens. Now I can feed my child, you know, if like the mother's not nursing. Now you need to have it because so many kids are able to survive. They exist now.
Yeah, this is the definition of a success problem, because in the past we had infant mortality rates that were absolutely through the roof. It was a huge problem. And for, you know, a culture that says that we don't want more people, we sure do everything in our power to make sure that babies can survive, which I think is great. I think that any sufficiently advanced society absolutely should be pointed in the direction of making sure that the youngest, most vulnerable members of society live better.
But you had more infant mortality, but people would also have way more kids.
Yeah, that's true too.
Some people would have like 7 or 8 kids, and if 2 of them died, that was just how it went. You had population growth. Now you look at the West, and our populations are dying. Yeah. I mean, we're way below what we're supposed to be having to have sustainable. I mean, Russia's going to have like 60% of its population drop by the year 2100.
Wow.
The crazy thing to me is the idea of these millennial women being like, it destroys your body. And it's just like, that's how you view it is just a crazy thing.
That's pure decadence.
Yes.
Is it because the babies are bigger because of the diet, more like bovine growth hormone and stuff in the diet?
Yeah, basically.
RBGH babies.
Seriously.
Maybe.
So the babies are big, and it's really hard on women because we're so gosh darn smart. Really big heads. This is why infants or babies and children need care for so long, is because their brains, first of all, their heads are incredibly unwieldy for them to hold up, and we can barely squeeze them out as it is. If they were to develop in the womb any longer, we wouldn't be able to give birth and we would just go extinct. So it's, again, that's the definition of a success problem, because we are so smart. They develop outside the womb so much longer than something like a baby elephant that literally hits the ground running and can now get away from predators. So humans we're in a different class, and we have much different sets of problems to deal with. Thankfully, we're equipped with IQ and all that.
I think we're going to survive.
Hope so.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.